The first thing Daniel Reyes noticed was the silence. Not the peaceful kind, the heavy kind, the kind that presses against your ears and makes your heartbeat sound too loud. He opened his eyes slowly. Sunlight spilled through half-open blinds, cutting the room into pale golden shadow. Dust floated in the air. A ticking clock sat somewhere behind him, counting seconds that didn't feel real. Daniel frowned. This wasn't his room. He knew that instantly. The bed was too large. The sheets were too soft. The scent in the air wasn't detergent and old coffee. It was something expensive, floral, unfamiliar. His breath caught. He turned his head. And that was when his world tilted off its axis. A woman lay beside him, not just any woman. Her blonde hair spilled across the pillow like silk. Her face calm, composed even in sleep, was unmistakable. Daniel's heart slammed into his ribs. No, he whispered. Because the woman lying next to him was Evelyn Cross, CEO of Cross Dynamics, tech billionaire, one of the most powerful women in the country, the woman whose name lit up headlines, the woman whose face was on magazine covers, the woman who had shaken his hand less than 12 hours ago and walked out of his life. Or so he thought. Tell me this is just a dream, he breathed. His hands shook as he pushed himself upright, sheets sliding down to his waist. His head spun. Memories colliding in fragments, glass clinking, laughter, city lights, a rooftop, rain, the charity gala. He remembered the gala. But he didn't remember this. He glanced down at himself, white undershirt, unfamiliar sheets. He looked back at her. Evelyn shifted slightly in her sleep. Daniel froze. Panic crawled up his spine. This wasn't some fantasy. This wasn't a drunken illusion. This was real. And if this was real, then something had gone terribly, terribly wrong. The night before had felt unreal even then. Daniel hadn't wanted to go to the gala. He didn't belong in rooms filled with crystal chandeliers and people who talked about stock mergers like weather forecasts. He was only there because his friend Marcus, his boss, technically had begged him. You designed the system, Marcus had said. They're funding it. You should be there. So Daniel had worn his one decent suit, borrowed a tie, and tried not to look like someone who still lived in a cramped apartment with peeling paint and a leaky sink. That was where he'd seen her. Evelyn Cross didn't enter rooms. Rooms reacted to her. People straightened. Conversations paused. Heads turned. She wore a midnight blue dress, simple, elegant, powerful, no excessive jewelry, no forced smiles. She looked like a woman who had learned early that strength didn't need decoration. Daniel had tried not to stare. He failed. Their introduction had been brief. This is Daniel Reyes, Marcus had said proudly, lead developer on the Atlas project. Evelyn's gaze had settled on Daniel, sharp, curious, unsettling. So you're the mind behind it, she'd said. Her voice was calm, low, controlled. Daniel had nodded, suddenly aware of how dry his mouth was. I helped build it, yes. She'd smiled. Just slightly. And that smile had stayed with him the entire night. They'd talked, first about work, then about ideas, then about things that had nothing to do with either. She asked questions no one else asked. She listened, actually listened. At some point, the room had faded away. By the time they stepped onto the rooftop terrace to escape the noise, Daniel felt like he'd known her for years. Rain had started to fall. She'd laughed at that softly, genuinely. I hate small talk, she'd said. But with you, it's quiet. He remembered that. He remembered her looking at the city like it was something she'd conquered, but never quite belonged to. He remembered thinking, she's lonely. What he didn't remember was how they'd ended up here. Daniel. Her voice, soft, groggy. His name. His breath stopped. Evelyn's eyes fluttered open. For a brief moment, confusion crossed her face. Then awareness. Then stillness. They stared at each other. Seconds passed. Minutes maybe. Finally, she spoke. You're awake. Daniel swallowed. Yeah. She sat up slowly, pulling the sheet around herself. Posture instinctively composed even in shock. This wasn't the reaction of a woman embarrassed. It was the reaction of a woman calculating consequences. How much do you remember? She asked. Daniel let out a weak laugh. That depends. How bad is it? Her lips pressed together. Enough, she said carefully, to know this wasn't a mistake. That made his chest tighten. Evelyn, he said quietly. I don't remember agreeing to anything. And I would never. I know, she interrupted. Neither would I. Silence fell again. She looked away first, staring at the window, jaw tightening. We didn't plan this, she said. But we were both sober, we both chose it. Daniel ran a hand through his hair. Then why does it feel like the ground just disappeared under my feet? Because it had. Because when you woke up beside someone whose life existed on a different planet than yours, gravity worked differently. Evelyn exhaled slowly. I should leave, she said. Wait. The word escaped him before he could stop it. She looked back at him. What happens now? He asked. Her eyes softened just for a second. That, she said, is the dangerous question. Evelyn Cross had built her life on control. Every decision measured. Every risk calculated. Every emotion filed away where it couldn't interfere. There was a reason she was alone at 34, and it wasn't because she lacked options. She rose from the bed, smoothing her blouse, reclaiming herself piece by piece. This doesn't change anything, she said firmly. Your project will be evaluated professionally. No favoritism. No complication. Daniel nodded slowly. I wouldn't want it any other way. She paused at the door. This stays between us, she added. He met her gaze. Of course. She hesitated. For the first time since waking, uncertainty flickered across her face. And Daniel, last night didn't happen because of power, or influence, or escape. Then why? He asked. She looked at him, really looked at him. Because you saw me, she said quietly. Not the CEO. Not the headlines, me. Then she left. The door closed softly behind her. Daniel sat alone on the bed, staring at the space she'd occupied. The room felt colder. And emptier. The next days were torture. Every article about Evelyn felt personal. Every mention of cross dynamics felt loaded. At work, Marcus noticed his distraction immediately. You okay? He asked. Daniel nodded too quickly. Yeah. Just tired. The Atlas project moved forward. Meetings were scheduled. Reviews planned. And then came the email from Evelyn Cross. Subject. Private discussion. Daniel stared at the screen for a long time before responding. They met in her office. Glass walls. Steel accents. The city stretched behind her like a kingdom. She looked untouchable again. Professional. Controlled. I wanted to clarify boundaries, she said. Daniel nodded. So did I. Their eyes met. The air between them was thick with things unsaid. What happened, she continued, cannot happen again. His chest tightened, but he nodded. Understood. A pause. But, she added, that doesn't mean it didn't matter. That nearly broke him. Evelyn, he said quietly, you don't get to say that and then pretend we're strangers. Her jaw clenched. I don't have the luxury of pretending, she said. Everything I touch becomes a liability. And what am I? He asked. A risk? She didn't answer. That was answer enough. Weeks passed. Distance grew. But something lingered. In quiet moments, Evelyn found herself replaying the way Daniel listened. The way he didn't try to impress her. The way he spoke about building things that mattered, not just things that scaled. Daniel, meanwhile, tried to bury himself in work. But loneliness is loud when you've tasted connection. Then everything exploded, a leak. Photos. Blurry, grainy, but undeniable. Evelyn entering the hotel, Daniel beside her. Headlines followed. CEO's secret affair, power imbalance or personal choice. The board demanded answers. Daniel was called in. HR. Legal. Media silence agreements. He sat there, stunned. I never wanted this, he said quietly. Evelyn stood at the end of the room, face unreadable. When everyone else left, she finally spoke. I'm sorry, she said. For what? He asked bitterly. For letting me matter? Her composure cracked. I'm sorry, she said again, voice trembling, that caring about you might destroy everything I built. Daniel stood. Then let it, he said. She looked at him in shock. You built an empire, he continued. But you forgot to build a life. Silence. Tears gathered in her eyes, but she didn't let them fall. I don't know how to choose both, she whispered. Then choose yourself, he said. For once. The board forced her hand. Public statement. Distance. Damage control. Daniel resigned. He didn't ask her to stop him, and that hurt most of all. Months passed. Winter returned. Daniel played piano again on the street this time. Music was honest. Music didn't care about headlines. One evening, as snow began to fall, someone stopped across from him. He looked up. Evelyn stood there. No entourage, no coat of armor. Just a woman in a simple sweater, eyes tired, heart exposed. "I sold my shares," she said. His breath caught. "You what?" "I stepped down," she continued. "For the first time in my life, I chose something uncertain." She stepped closer. "I chose you," she said softly. "If you'll still have me." Daniel stood, hands trembling. "Evelyn," he whispered, "I never wanted to be your escape." "You're not," she said. "You're my beginning." Snow fell between them like a blessing. This time, when they stood together, it wasn't a dream, it was a choice, and it was real.